I would definitely grab a piece of paper and a pen and take a couple of notes, because we're going to be talking about something that's really, really important. This is something that I think every single one of us struggle with on some level. Like for some of us, it's really, really intense. And for some of us, it's just under the surface and we're not really aware that there's like this inner dialogue going on. There's kind of like, sometimes we'll talk about it as like, well, there's the angel and the devil. We'll say like, well, how are you doing with your food today? Oh, I've been so naughty. I've been so bad, right? There's this judgment call on what it is that we're eating and judging it by like either being good or bad, naughty or nice, right or wrong. And that kind of, separation and judgment that we make only stimulates more of this diet mentality, more of this trying to be good, but then having this voice inside of us that's like, who really cares? Does it really matter? Just a little bit. It's not that big of a deal. Like this quote unquote devil side that is just trying to get us to do this other thing, even though we don't want to do the thing, but we kind of want to do the thing because it just makes sense, because it's sweet and it tastes good and it's free and somebody handed it to me and it's my birthday and whatever the reason and excuse is, when really what we want to address is this inner dialogue, this argument, this fight that somehow we've split. And there's these two different parts of us. Some of us are really aware that this is what's going on. And it's like, it's a problem. And sometimes we kind of need someone to identify it, to give words to it, to understand that there actually is this thing going on inside. And when we fight ourselves, the truth is there's no winner. This is the problem. We have to find a different way. And there's two ways that I have found are really helpful and really powerful for switching up the way that we think about this, softening the energy, taking the edges off, softening them so that we can actually begin to move forward without the struggle and without the constantly fighting ourselves and without the constantly trying to make justifications and excuses for our behavior. Because quite frankly, it doesn't matter what it is that we do with food or not, we can find evidence and reasons why that is good, and we can find evidence and reasons why that is not good. So we can make ourselves crazy with that, because we're going to be right all of the time and we're going to be wrong all of the time if we're always in this duality and this judgment space. So we don't need to go exploring deep into the mind. People get like really nervous about that, knowing that I'm a hypnotherapist. Like, well, what if something comes up I'm not ready to deal with? Like, that's not the way the brain works. The way that the brain works. And there's that saying, even in the Bible, like God will not give you more than you can handle. Like if it's coming up for a reason and you're ready for it. You have the ability to address it and to move through it. And you might need to ask for some help. I ask for help all of the time. I need a lot of help, and that's totally okay. And the resources are available to you. So that's kind of my philosophy. I'm like, we don't need to go digging through stuff. Stuff will come up when it's ready. So if this is one of the things that's coming up for you, this kind of this duality, this right and wrong, this like angel and devil on my shoulder, this like, wanting to do something and then fighting with myself and then not doing it and then trying to like grab control and like, do the thing. And it's this like back and forth diet mentality. We just can't stay motivated. Oftentimes there's an inner dialogue going on that we might be aware of or might not be aware of. But if you're watching this and you're resonating with this, you're aware of it and you're ready to have some help around it. So that's the good news. And if not, you'll just click away and go somewhere else and be like, whatever, I'm not dealing with that. So there's two things. One is you want to, when it's coming up and you notice it, that's the gem, right? That is really where we have an opportunity for some space between the thought and the action, because oftentimes we're just going, and it's after the fact that we justify it. If you are actually noticing it, like either in the moment or before, ooh, that's like the sweet spot. I know that it's super uncomfortable and like not always awesome, but if you have tools, it actually becomes fun. I know that sounds wild, but it becomes not like a game, but kind of, where it's less emotional because you have the tools to move through it. You feel less trapped by what it is and more kind of curious as like, oh, my mind is doing something wild. Like, cool, I know what to do with this. So when we have strategies and we have tools and we have support, it actually makes the whole process of being a human being and making changes intentionally fun. I know it's crazy. Okay, so when it's coming up and you're realizing that you're having this like inner dialogue going on, there's two things to notice. One, is the voice you? Now, I get how that might sound a little bit weird. Like, obviously it's me, it's my own inner dialogue. It's like, it's me. It's been with me forever. It's like that justification. It's that, that little girl who just wants to be left alone. It's, whatever. There's so many different ways in which we can kind of like, try and put words to what's happening. But oftentimes the inner dialogue seems very personal and you're like, oh no, yeah, that's definitely me. This is my own voice. It's my own language. I've been talking to myself this way for a really long time. So there's one way to deal with that. And there's a different way to deal with if the voice is actually not you. Meaning, maybe you realize that it's like your mother or your father or a friend from school, right? Like, I have a couple of those where I realize that some of my inner dialogue of my judgment of myself is actually my mom's judgment of herself that I took on, or her own fear coming out on me, like, do this, don't do that, this is good, this is bad, or my dad's voice, where it's like, oh, don't eat that, you're going to get fat. And my mom telling me like fat means unlovable. And it's like, wait, this is all these weird messages that are not actually me. I might have taken them on and made them my own, but they're not actually me. You can kind of sometimes actually identify occasionally that it's somebody else's messages that are not even yours. So if it's not even yours, let's start with that one first. That one's, we don't even realize how much power we actually have. You actually have a lot of power over your own thinking. No one ever really taught us this. We were taught what to think, right? What to do, what to think, and everyone's got their opinion, and this is what good girls do, and this is what, this is what you should do, yada, yada, yada. But not many people taught us how to think. Not many people taught us how the brain actually works, how the conscious and the subconscious mind work, how we take in information and data and then translate that into our reality. How can we actually make changes? Like, no one really taught me that. I had to go searching for that. So anyway, I'm teaching you this right now. If you realize that the voice is not actually you, what you can do is you can change it. Meaning, notice that it's got a cadence, it's got a tone, it's got a tempo, it's got a rhythm to it. You actually have power to intentionally speed that voice up so that it goes faster and faster and faster. Remember, like back in the day, we used to be able to like press fast forward or rewind, like on our VHS and our cassette tapes, and we'd go, like the voice would be normal, and then you press it and it would go. So you can make it so fast, even so loud, that it goes outside of your hearing, and place that voice like on the moon, even farther, place it on the stars, just speed it up and make it so loud that you can't even hear it and it's so far away. You always want to give your mind, though, two options. The mind loves options, and your mind will automatically do what is best for you in any one moment. When that voice starts to come up, you can actually start to slow it down. And it's just like, oh my God, you're talking way too slow. I can't even understand what it is that you're saying. I can't concentrate enough on what it is that you're saying. So you can take that annoying voice and you can slow it down, and you can make it so slow, soft, silent, and just place it like down, 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 down in the earth. So notice how I got a couple of our different senses involved, right? We're either going to speed up and make it so loud and place it way far, 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 or we're going to slow it down and make it so slow and silent that it goes down, 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 down. That is two ways. And again, your brain, as you practice this, will become more familiar with how to organize and separate and rewire your thinking inside your brain so that you're not tortured by these voices that are not even you. Okay, so awesome. So that's when it's somebody else, mom, dad, society, brother, friend, whatever. Someone said something to you and you took it on as your own, and now you don't want it, and you speed it up or you slow it down and you create more room and more space in your mind. Now, one of the things that's always helpful is to then be intentional about what it is that you do want to be thinking. You don't want to just leave an empty space. I mean, unless it's like, automatically you're like, oh, thank God. And it floods with all these like positive thoughts and positive images and positive thinking. Like, that's awesome. If you're still kind of in that mode of like, well, I'm not really sure what to put there, there will be sometimes, especially because we live in an energetic world, right, where there's energy and frequency. If you're not intentional about putting something positive in that space, it will naturally kind of disintegrate into other negative things, which is fine if you are being in, if you are like, okay, and you're going to notice that and work on it, and notice that and work on it, and notice that and work on it. Like, if you're in that space, that's cool, but I'd rather not do that. So I'm giving you the very loving suggestion to be intentional about putting positive love, God, spirit. You want to pray, you want to do some meditation, something to fill that new space that's just been opened up inside of your mind with what it is that you actually do want. Okay, so the other thing about our voice. Okay, so that was the first thing. If it's not you, somebody else's messages. If it is your voice, this is a little bit different. And so this takes a little bit more tenderness, a little bit more compassion. And this is really where we tend to go into like taking a stance, like, I'm taking a stance against this, negative voice, against this, trying to sabotage me, messages, against the justification. Like, this is where we really get into the diet mentality. And there's a part of us that comes up and is like, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm starting on Monday and I'm going to be good, right? Like, we get very like puffy in the chest and we're just trying to like harness and focus on the positive and just like, get all of the negative away and like just focus on the positive. Like, I don't care if I'm hungry. I don't care if I'm tired. I don't care if I'm sick. Like, I'm not going to eat the cake, right? Like, we get in that mode. Well, God bless us. That is willpower. Unfortunately, and that's the conscious part of our brain. Unfortunately, that part of the brain can only handle about 7 plus or minus 2 things at any one time. Doesn't do well when we're hungry, angry, lonely, tired, sad, overwhelmed, life is happening, which it does. Quite frankly, we get hungry several times a day, so that's annoying. So we just can't rely on willpower. That's the bottom line. Willpower is really only good for short term when we are, I don't even know what that would be, but it's definitely short term. I mean, don't get me wrong. You do need your power of will. You do need willpower to do anything, even to do what I'm asking you to do right now. You need your power of will to go grab that pen and that paper and write it down. You need your power of will to do anything, but we don't want to rely on that day after day after day after day, especially when it comes to our eating habits and patterns and behaviors, because it's so complex. So willpower, thank you very much. I love you. I need you, but I need something that is actually more sustainable so that I'm not feeling like I'm on quicksand and always being sucked in, having to like struggle my way up. So if it's our own voice going on inside of our minds, then the tenderness that we need is to begin to ask questions instead of just putting our foot down and saying, this is the way that it is. Getting curious about what is happening there. So the first question would be like, hey, cool little voice that is like very insistent that I eat in between meals. I mean, quite frankly, if you're eating breakfast, lunch, and dinner, which I highly recommend that you do, and you're eating real food and plenty of it, it's a lot, right? Plenty of real food at breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and you're like having proper portions, which is abundant in vegetables and fruit, and having protein at every meal, like balanced. You're not going to die between lunch and dinner. You're definitely not going to die between dinner and breakfast, regardless of what your brain tells you, right? Regardless of what is happening, you're not going to die between meals. Like, The human body is very resilient and very amazing. Now, if you're skipping meals or you're not eating enough, or you're not eating the right portions, like that's a little bit of a different story. Then of course your body's going to be like really screaming at you to do what you need to do. But if you are being intentional and consistent, like you're not going to die between meals. So how do we not snack and not binge and not eat things off plan and not go turning to food for comfort and emotional satisfaction? Well, when that voice comes in to try and justify it, right, and give us a reason or excuse why it's okay, ask that voice what its job is. What's its job? And oftentimes, what I've found for myself and for hundreds, thousands of people that I have worked with, it is often that part of ourselves' job to have joy, to have satisfaction, to have pleasure, right? To be free from worry and care and boredom, to satisfy any of the feelings, including hunger, although true hunger, again, is different. It's short-lived and it passes very quickly, right? It's kind of like having to go to the bathroom, but like you're in the middle of something, you're like, oh my God. And then it passes and you're like, okay, I'm cool. Like I could wait another hour. True hunger is kind of like that, right? Like it comes up and it's like, can we do it now? And you're like, no, not now. And it's like, okay, right, I'll come back in a couple hours. So it's really not that big of a deal. It's not the life or death kind of deal that like sometimes can happen inside where it's like, I need it now or I'm gonna die. So oftentimes the positive underlying intention is something positive. Do you get why I call it a positive underlying intention? It's the joy, it's the pleasure, it's the release from boredom or care or worry or that twinge of hunger. So it's good. It's good. It's so good. But we want to not just stop there. We want to dive a little bit deeper. And sometimes it can be really helpful to ask that part of us how old it thinks that we are. Because soothing with food works for a long time. And if you're part of this group and you've been struggling for a little bit with food and weight and body image, and you're like, oh my God, like, how do I get this under control? How do I balance? How do I lose the weight? How do I not think about it so much? What is happening here? Like it used to not be an issue. And like, now it's an issue. And like, what's happening? Soothing with food is totally normal. It's totally natural. It is definitely something we did when we were younger, probably, and throughout the years. And there comes a time when we go, okay, I'm ready to learn a new way, right? I'm ready to put food in its proper place where it's gosh darn heck of enjoyable when I eat it. And then I get some freedom in between meals to live my life and not have to think about food. How do we actually do that? So sometimes if you ask, that voice often says, well, we're 5 or 8 or 10 or 14. Right? So oftentimes there's a part of us that is still acting and responding to life in a rather immature way. With all the love, it's immature to turn to food for comfort again and again and again and again. There are other ways. Now, are we never going to do that again? Probably not, but you get what I'm saying. There's other ways to feel joy and pleasure and satisfaction and soothe ourselves emotionally. Maybe it's time to begin to develop that muscle and develop that skill of soothing with things that are not. What's really powerful about that is that then, if we get an age, right, and like we go, oh, wow, like, yeah, I get it. Like that part is positive. It's got a positive underlying intention. It's got a job to do. And it thinks that I'm 14. Oh, that totally makes sense. Because I remember ever since I was 14, like, you can't tell me what to do. I'm going to eat what I want to eat. So sometimes if we take the time to bring that part of ourselves up to emotional and age equivalent speed on like all of the resources that we've had, the books that we've read, the support that we have, the experiences that we've had, all the different ways in which we know how to soothe and to comfort ourselves now, and all of the reasons why we want to be more intentional about the food that we're eating and feel really good about it, not have this draw towards the emotional type of eating. And all of the reasons why it's like, okay, right? All of a sudden that part of ourselves has been acknowledged and listened to and educated. It's very powerful. This is this is one of the techniques that I use with my clients. Now, obviously, it's a lot easier if someone's guiding you. And so they can kind of navigate when other things come up and there's other resistance. And, I would highly recommend that you see a professional. I am more than happy to take you through some sessions. This is really good. Okay, so there's one more thing though, if you want to try and do this on your own. Asking that part of yourself, again, that's responsible for the snacking and the binge eating and the emotional eating and that kind of stuff. Now that we know what the job is, what the positive underlying intention is, how old I think that, that part thinks that you are, and we've updated with more present information and knowledge and wisdom. And then you ask, so if the positive underlying intention that you are seeking here could be met in a different way so that we can actually heal our relationship with food and body and make it easy so that all of the different parts of our self underlying intention could be met, but in a new and a different way, would that be okay for us to figure out a way to work together? 99.99% of the time, that part goes, yes. And then your mind and your subconscious and your spirit and in meditation and prayer, and when you sleep at night, will begin to work out the details, because now you've opened up to other possibilities. Now you've softened the edges. Now you have taken the time to really acknowledge and accept and really dive into what it means to have compassion and love and respect for yourself, all of yourself and all of the parts. Really, really powerful, wonderful stuff. So that 0.01% of the time where they're like, no, sometimes that just requires us to go back and ask some more questions about what's really going on and what's underneath that resistance. Okay, ladies, super powerful stuff. Just absolutely amazing when we begin to learn how to rewire our brain, take our power back, take our control back, and really live in harmony with our own self. Not this devil angel stuff. None of this, I've been good, I've been bad. Drop that. That's diet mentality. We're done with that. We're finding new ways to encourage ourselves and to fill ourselves up on so many levels so that we move into the world full. I love you so much, and we'll talk to you soon.